Hello and welcome to the Modern Fairy Sightings Podcast, where we listen to people's fairy encounters. But take heed, we're not talking about winged Tinkerbells here. These are real fairies, real encounters that took people like you and I by surprise. Stay a while and hear their stories. My name is Jo Hickey Hall, and I'm a folklore researcher. Dear listener, welcome to Series 4 of the Modern Fairy Sightings Podcast and a return to fortnightly episodes. In this show we hear a first-hand account of a woman's childhood experience playing with fairies in the rockery at home.
I'm 74 this year and I still believe in fairies and I don't mind who knows it.
I hope you're well. It's Lunasa here, beginning of August, where we begin to look towards the darkness of the year. The promise of bounty that was born in Beltane and that has grown through these warm months is now reaped at Lunasa. Themes of rebirth and renewal abound, along with the knowledge that some things must come to an end as part of the natural cycle. It's a good time to take stock and feel gratitude for any sense of abundance that we have in our lives. Perhaps the loved ones we hold close, the memories we've made during this year so far, or simply having a safe home and nourishment to feel grateful for, something that many in this world are currently without. I've had lots of lovely messages from you indicating that you missed the more regular episodes, and I'm glad to be back with you all again every fortnight. If you are enjoying the show, please consider supporting it for just £3 a month at patreon.com. The monthly episodes since February allowed me some space to get involved with fairy groups and conferences, as well as appearances on other podcasts, which I've enjoyed very much. I recently joined paranormal researcher Paul Sinclair on his highly recommended Truth Proof YouTube weekly live stream. And equally, it feels good to be back sharing the main aim of the Modern Fairy Sightings project, which is to provide a space for people to talk about their encounters, for others who need to hear them. One aspect of the project is to put experiences in touch with each other, and that's something I'll continue doing. If you have something you'd like to share or a comment about the show, please contact me at scarletofthefae.com, that's Scarlet with 2 T's, where you'll also find the show notes for this episode, and you can also find me at _remain_curious on Twitter and Instagram. I hope you enjoy this chat. There's a bonus episode on Patreon where the guest discusses her family's ongoing connection with the Fae. She also shares her method of psychic protection, and we talk about our personal experiences of attending Catholic convent schools as sensitive children. Time to
I suppose the obvious place to start is my earliest memories of when I was a child, going back when I was about 4 or 5, sitting out in my mum's and dad's garden. They had a beautiful rockery, and it was, I don't know if you know ironstone. Some people call it sandstone. It's a reddish rock.
Oh, yeah.
And it's very hard, but it has soft patches in it. And I used to sit in this rockery. It was sunken, so I could hide myself. I was very much a loner.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't make friends easily. I just didn't get on very well with people. That was a bit odd, I guess. But I used to sit with the fairies, talking to them. I don't actually remember talking, but we were communicating. I do remember that. And I used to dig little holes out of the soft sand in these rocks to make little houses for them.
Oh, lovely.
If ever I was feeling a bit hassled, that's where you'd find me, sitting down on the ground in the rockery, talking to the fairies. And I still talk to the fairies now. I'm 73 and nearly 74 now, and I'm still talking to fairies. I always say I was away with the fairies, but hey ho. But that was when it started. That's my first memory. From them, I mean, the house, away from fairies a bit now, our house, it was a very big old house. It was connected by a tunnel to an abbey down in the woods. This sounds very mysterious, doesn't it?
It is, yeah.
But it used to be the respite house for the monks at the abbey. And I used to regularly, I suppose when I was about 8, I started seeing them, monks walking around the garden, saying their prayers. They had the cowls and the hoods up, hands together in prayer, and lines of them walking around the garden, saying their prayers.
How amazing.
It didn't really worry me at the time. I don't think at that time I was too sure what I was seeing. I just used to see these monks, and I'd tell Mum and Dad, "Oh yeah, that's nice, dear," because Mum and Dad was Christian spiritualists anyway. So I was brought up in this belief of a continuation of life, and that we, could commune with people in spirit, which I still believe. I've seen enough of it, and so it was kind of normal.
Yeah, and it is. Although not to most people, but it is normal.
It is. I mean, I do remember my granddad lived with us when I was quite young, and he used to hold physical seances in his room. And my sister, who was 2 years younger than me, we were told to go to bed and stay there and not make a sound. Don't come downstairs. So what did we do? We used to creep halfway down the stairs and sit on the landing listening to what was going on. I quite honestly, it scared the living daylights out of me.
Oh my goodness. What sort of stuff was it?
So we'd listen and hear all these trumpets going and things crashing around, and then we'd hear them, when they'd finished, we'd hear them whispering and talking about it, unaware of us listening in, and about how the trance medium, who was tied to the dining room chair, it had big arms, it was a big old armchair thing, and he was apparently carried around the room by spirit. Things were being, presents from spirit were dropped in people's laps, and horns flying around the room. And I'm quite honestly, to be blunt about it, used to scare the shit out of me.
Yeah.
I didn't like it at all. I was very uncomfortable with it. I'm quite honestly, I still am. I don't like that. And although I've been through a lot of circles and things, I feel uncomfortable with it. It's not for me at all. The next one I saw was my granddad Smith. I was quite close to him. He had diabetes, lost both his legs, and of course in those days he was confined to bed. And he taught me how to play cribbage. In fact, I still have his cribbage board. He made it himself. He was a master carpenter. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful, and I treasure it. But I saw him sitting on the end of my bed when I was about 9 years old, and although I recognised him, I dived under the bed covers because I knew he was dead, and I thought he shouldn't really be. But, I was young. I felt very sorry about it afterwards because he was my granddad. But at the time, I think it was a bit of a shock. I don't know what made me look up. But, I dived under the bed covers. It's just, I don't know.
So you're very clairvoyant.
About it. Have a lot of it in our family, the whole family. I mean, my mum was a medium.
Medium,
and she used to have to go into trance and do readings and all sorts. And she actually went into trance one day when we were there at home, and I felt very uncomfortable because it wasn't my mum talking. It was a different voice. It was a man's voice, in fact, came through, and I felt very uncomfortable with that.
Yeah,
because there was my mum sitting there. But it wasn't my mum, and I was in my late 30s then, but I was very uncomfortable with it. I didn't like that at all. That wasn't my mum.
Yeah, that would be disturbing when it's someone that you love, because Yeah.
I've never been comfortable with all that side of it at all. Although I know it happens. I'm more resigned to seeing things now, and I'm seeing things more again as I get older.
What have you noticed as you've got older then? What do you tend to see?
Oh God, a couple of years ago, my dad popped up. I was washing up on the boat. We live on the narrow boat. And I was washing up at the kitchen sink, and something made me turn round, and I looked down the lounge, and there was my dad leaning over the fire. He always loved the fire. And he was leaning against the wall, with a great big grin on his face. And I'd had a dream about him previously when we first bought the boat, but he was there, and I actually said, "Oh, hello, Dad." And I thought, and then he'd gone. But it was such a lovely feeling. I still smile about it now because it just left me feeling. It was not long before my sister passed over. And it was as if he'd come and say, "It's okay, she's going to be all right. We're going to look after her."
Yeah.
And I knew it wouldn't be long before my sister died. So, but it was just, he was just suddenly there, and he was so solid. I could describe all his clothes. He was in his flat cap, which he always used to wear, an old flat cap and tweed jacket and trousers, his gardening gear, because he lived in his garden. He loved his garden. And he had vegetable plant. And there he was, standing there. If I'd been close, I felt I could have touched him.
Oh, that's so nice. That's so lovely.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
It's a great comfort when they come back and, come back and say hello. Yeah,
that certainly was. It was unexpected, and it was lovely to know.
Yeah.
My sister's kind of been in touch, and I was cooking one day, something had gone wrong, and I dropped something, and I heard this bang in my sister's voice in my head. I thought, that's typical of my sister, Mavis.
Okay.
She was the joker.
Yeah.
And that was her way of saying that wasn't long after she'd passed. But of course, I thought, being a psychic, I suppose it wouldn't take us long to get in touch with anybody on this side, really.
That's right.
It was something we've been used to all our lives, really. And we've grown up with it. We've lived with it. My 3 children have got it. And my little granddaughter is now showing signs. When she was 3, she's 10 now. But when she was 2 to 3 years old, she was telling her mum, my daughter, about her previous mummy and daddy and how they lived in a mud hut, and a nasty man came with a gun and shot them.
My goodness.
And she remembers it. She was too young to have seen anything like that on the television.
Yeah.
It's a previous memory. It is concerted. But she takes it all in her stride, unfortunately, with the upbringing, with us talking openly about all this kind of thing, always we have, she's talked about it, and it's fine.
Yeah.
But I was a bit shocked, to say the least.
I've heard that children can hang on to past memories until they're about 3 or so, and then they tend to, but I don't know whether that's the kind of socialization, going to school, and the sort of indoctrination that comes with that, with standard education.
I think we all go through phases. I think. For a long time, I didn't see or hear anything from spirit. When I was going through my divorce, I think they kind of understood that I was in a bit of a bad place, and to leave me alone for a bit till I got myself sorted out. But now I'm settled. It all seems to be coming back, and I'm experiencing things. There's often somebody running around in this place at night that I hear and feel, even feels hearing sometimes. But I've often thought he was up making a cup of tea. I said, no, I didn't get up last night. Well, somebody was in the kitchen making tea. I could hear him rattling around with the cups and things.
Yeah.
I think it's simply the fact that because we're open to it, we attract spirit. I think that's my theory anyway. Because I don't think there was anybody on this boat when we moved on it. It was a new boat. So it's quite bizarre, but there's a lot goes on here, and we lose stuff, and then it turns up in the most unlikely places weeks later. And for goodness sakes, I have to say, please, can I have it back, because I need it,
And that works.
If it turns up eventually.
Yeah. I guess maybe being on the water as well.
Could be. Yeah, could be.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Perhaps being on the
It used to happen
water.
at our house as well. We'd lose stuff and then it would turn up weeks later. Oh, for goodness sakes, I'm sure we didn't put it there, you know. It happens a lot. It happens a lot. But
That's
I kind of got
wonderful.
used to it now.
And it
Yeah.
sounds like your dad was really chuffed with where you were living. So when you got the boat, it was around the time that he passed, and then he turned up, showing his enjoyment of the boat. So it sounds like he's right there
Actually,
with you.
he died quite a long time before. He died in
Ah,
1994. And we only got the boat about 13, 14 years ago. But I did have a dream when we first decided to buy the boat. I have these very vivid dreams, and they're more than dreams, they're in full colour and they always have a meaning. And this one wasn't my dad. And I actually drew a picture of it because it was so big. I mean, I'm not good, but it gives the essence of it. And he was laying on his side on this beautiful wooden carved bed, slatted bed on a narrowboat. It was obviously a narrowboat by the size and shape of it. You know, you lay on your side with your hand on your head on your hand, so you're sort of half sitting up. And he was laying there, grinning from ear to ear, as if to say, "This is a fabulous idea. This is so you. You've done the right thing." That's what I got from it.
yeah.
And that was the first time I saw my dad, but that was in a dream, and that was very special. Although Mum and Dad, when I first was divorced, they used to take me away to a place. It was like an amazing hug, and I never wanted to come home. It's so difficult to describe, Jo. Just pure light and colours I can't even describe. And it was just like the most amazing hug I was getting from my mum and dad. And I never wanted to come back to my own body. But, I can't come back. I did. I obviously got things I've got to do. So come back I did. And you carry on. But I treasure those dreams. They are very, very special to me. And they do mean so, so much.
I absolutely understand. I lost my father. He passed over in 2014, but I had one of those dreams it was a few months ago, and but funny enough, my sister we'd both felt him around, and I had this such lovely dream, and it was just so nice to spend time with him. You really do feel like you've spent time with them, and I was so thankful for that time. And not long after that, uncle passed, so it was around that time. So I can't remember actually whether it was just after that, but I have a feeling it was just before. But yeah, they are so special, and they really stand out. They're not like usual dreams at all.
No, they're not. Definitely not. They're far more than dreams. I think it's a kind of astral travel, which I've done lots of in the past anyway. So I'm sure it's a kind of astral travel, and they take you off somewhere very, very special.
Yeah.
Very, very special.
Somewhere in between that we can meet, maybe.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Absolutely.
Do you have a technique that you use for astral travel?
No, it just happens. I mean, I haven't experienced that for quite some time. But I just used to go to sleep and suddenly I find myself flying out the window. And I remember one time I was over the rooftops of our old house and looking down and seeing the road and thinking, mind the pylons. I always mind the pylons when I wasn't in my physical form, that's a certainty.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, mind the pylons. Oh dear, that was quite weird. Yeah.
How long do you think you've been doing that for?
Oh, since I was a kid.
Yeah.
Since I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that I've never tried to do it. It just happened.
Yeah.
Heaven knows how it works. I don't know.
No. Do you remember that as a child then? Do you have any recollection of doing that as a child? Because lots of people I've spoken to have, and I had something similar myself between the age of 3 and 4. It's something that I used to do, and I have very vivid memories of it. Do you...
I was hard to doing it, and I think I was about 10 when I really remember it starting.
Right.
And at our first house again, where everything used to happen. Yes, I do have very, very vivid memories of that, and flying up over the top and seeing the house and seeing the moon and the stars and that, and the rooftops and the chimney pots and that kind of thing. I was very weird because I'm terrified of heights, but I used to, and I always used to fight. I know it sounds a weird one, but I can remember I used to put my arms out to the side. They weren't down by my side. They were out, one right out one side and one out the other side, and that was how I used to. Why I should remember that, I don't have a clue, but I do. It sticks in my memory. That was how I used to fly. Did you have a preference?
I don't remember what I did with my arms. I just remember the breeze at the tops of the trees. I was at the tops of the trees and the leaves and the breeze there. I remember, beautiful. And I remember where I used to go. I used to go out the back and off to the left and down some fields. Just over some fields, but following the line of the trees. Healing has helped me many times in my life when I'd reached a point where something needed to change. In 2005, I trained with Martin Brofman to learn the body mirror system of healing, which was life-changing for me. It's based on the idea that the parts of your body that don't work well reflect the parts of your life that don't work well, and about which you have tension in your consciousness. The understanding is that tension is stress, and stress causes symptoms. In a distance healing or in-person session, I move up the chakras, returning each one to wholeness using a colour map. During the process, I see images and situations, I hear words or receive impressions that tell me something about what caused the tension in that person's life. The feedback at the end of the session is a really big part of the healing. If you're interested in a chakra healing session, you can contact me at scarletofthefae@gmail.com.
Yes, I've done that. We lived next to a woods in our first house, and the woods led down to the abbey. But yes, I can remember going over the trees. I love the woods. I miss the woods, I must admit. This weekend, going back to this weekend, they had part of the place, there was a bluebell woods. And beautiful. I did actually go in it and just sit for a little while. Because it's just absolutely stunning. It is just lovely just to sit there and just breathe it in for a little bit, in all the madness of the chaos of the weekend. It was just beautiful just to sit there for a few minutes and just take in this perfume and see the blue and be near the woods. I'm a tree hugger, I admit it, I can't help it. I love trees. I've hugged them all my life. I spent half my life in them. My name means wood nymph, apparently.
Right.
It's very appropriate. Very appropriate, because I absolutely love the woods. I'd live in the woods if I got the chance.
Well, you're doing second best and living on the canal. That is just something that is life goals for me. Massive life goal.
It's living closer to nature, and I love that. And you're far more aware of nature around you, especially when the ducks come hammering on the gunnels sort of about 4 in the morning. they take the algae off the gunnels, they feed on it. And tapping along the edge. You say, "What on earth is that?" On the first time, what's going on? And it's the blooming ducks and the swans tapping on the gunnels, taking the algae off.
Gosh, yeah, totally different experience of life, isn't it? All of these things that you're not aware of. Amazing.
And the creaking ropes, and I love that sound, the creaking ropes when I'm laying in bed. That's home.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Such a nice slow pace. So when I was just thinking about your fairy experience. So at the time, sorry, I can't remember how old you said you were.
Oh, I started when I was about 4 or 5 is my
4 or
earliest
5.
memories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And did you get a picture in your mind of what they looked like?
Yes, yes, I can still remember that. And to be boring, quite honestly, it's a typical very pretty fairy pictures, but maybe that was my mind at that age, being a little girl and looking for fairies. Um, Maybe that was my idea, but they were there, and there was boy fairies and girl fairies, and I don't know how we communicated, but we did communicate, and they were a great comfort to me at that time. I was very much a loner as a child, and at school I was very much the one that was sitting on the bench on her own.
Mhm.
I was always the odd one. My sister had all the friends. She was very extrovert. I was far. I mean, God, at that I would never have done this at that time. Oh, geez, I wouldn't have spoken to a stranger.
Mm.
Not that you're strange, but you know what I'm saying. I just wouldn't have spoken to her. I wouldn't say boo to a goose in those
Yeah.
days, but I'm a lot more confident now.
Well, this is
Um,
it. You find your flow when when you're a sensitive child, you're a sensitive person in this world. Much of it can be quite jarring, and
yeah,
but when you grow older at a certain point, anyway, hopefully for most people, hopefully you find your space, you find your flow, you find the places and the people to surround yourself with that you can
absolutely.
pop yourself in and let your roots go down. Because when you go to these sort of institutions like school, or even sometimes just the area that you're in and the kids you're playing with, you don't feel like you realize you're not the same as other people, maybe. And
No,
it's a tricky one, isn't it? But
totally. And I was always the odd one out, always the one left behind.
mm,
Um, so I remember sitting. We had a little bit of woods that edged onto the big woods where our first house was. And I used to hide and sit in the woods, watching the kids out in the field at the top of the woods, watching them playing. I can remember it. I remember it vividly.
mm.
I remember watching my future husband there too.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh. When I went on to senior school, I don't know why my parents in their wisdom sent me to two Catholic schools, but they did. Um, but we used to have religious instruction.
Mm.
And I remember one day one of the nuns saying, don't have anything to do with Christian spiritualists. They're in league with the devil.
Oh no.
Friends that I did have were edging away
Oh, that's
along the
awful.
bench, right? So I stood
Oh,
up and I told this nun what I'd thought of her.
good for
I
you.
was so angry and I was so incensed that I'm afraid I stood up for myself, which is something I don't think I'd ever done before.
Good for you.
Consequently, I got sent to the headmistress, also a nun, of course. My
Mm,
parents were called into the school. And this particular nun, the
mm,
headmistress of the senior school, was far more sympathetic, and she listened to me because I could see people's auras at that time,
mm,
lots and vividly. And
mhm.
she asked me to describe her aura. So I did.
How amazing.
Yeah. And I got a lot of sympathy from her. But I
Gosh.
still didn't make any friends, apart from one who is still my friend now, 60 odd years later. We still keep in touch.
Oh, well, there you go. That's more than most people can say, I would
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. But yeah, I used to see auras. I still see them around the trees now.
That's funny that the nun, how did was that something that you were known for in school? How did she know, or did she just ask you? How did that come about?
Right. Because she asked me why I'd said what I'd said to this nun.
Yeah.
And I explained to her what this nun had said. Apparently, the nun did get into a lot of trouble for being so
I
rude about
bet
my
she,
religion
bet she
and my
did.
belief,
Good.
which was heartening. Um, and I think that just out of her kindness, she asked me to describe her auras. I don't know how we got onto the subject. I don't remember,
Mm,
but I do remember describing it to her.
mm.
And it does transpire that very quietly, the nuns do hold seances and all this kind of thing, but they don't advertise it.
Wow, fabulous. Yeah.
Yes, that was quite an interesting one, I thought.
Yeah. Do you know which order they were?
I honestly can't remember now.
No. Okay.
This festival this weekend, I finally plucked up courage to go and ask some questions. Because my daughter says, "Mummy, you're more witch than you realise."
It sounds like it.
They did reassure me that I can still keep my Christian faith and be witchy as well if I want to.
Absolutely, of course.
But it was quite interesting. I learned quite a lot. So it kind of helps me, sets me on maybe in a new path.
Yeah, absolutely. I know pagan Christians.
Yeah, I know plenty of pagans that be.
Christian pagan.
One of our pagan friends, he passed last autumn, and he was the loveliest person on this earth. He really, really was. He was he helped anybody and everybody and all the animals. They used to call him International Duck Rescue because if they were he lived on a boat. If there were any little ducks that were in dire need, had lost their mum, he'd rescue them, bring them up, and they'd follow along the towpath.
Oh, how sweet.
As he'd feed them and look after. He was just a lovely, lovely person. Yeah, we were devastated when he passed last year.
That's very sad to lose the good ones. I'm just thinking, with your with the fairy experience, can you describe what they looked like and any of the kind of conversation that you might have had? Do you remember the colours that they were or what they looked like?
The only way I can describe them is ethereal looking, almost transparent, but glistening, I suppose would be, like you get this transparent paper that's almost glistening. Oh God, I can't remember, there's a name for it. All
like the tracing paper.
More shiny than that.
Okay.
Luminescent almost.
Yeah.
All the colours of the rainbow. Like little tiny human beings they were to me, but with wings.
And how big were they?
I would, God Almighty. To me, at that time, they were maybe an inch or two, maybe a couple of inches. I think they can show themselves in any size that they like. My feeling. But for me, as a child, they were very tiny, and I guess that was their idea. So they didn't frighten me off. No, they were glorious creatures. I know I used to talk to them. I couldn't. I mean, it was a long time ago.
Yeah, it's a long time.
There was a response. I don't know now, but I could hear it in my head. I don't think I had to talk to them physically. We just communicated.
How did you feel when you were speaking to them?
Happy. They were my happiness at that time. For years. Yeah. Later, when Mum and Dad sold the house, it was pulled down. It's 72 flats now. We had 3 acres of ground there. I was about 11, 12. And I was absolutely devastated. Yeah. My family garden went. I did walk back up there, and I wish I hadn't, because there was a blooming great hole in the ground where my home would be.
Oh no.
No garden. But I was devastated. But I'm 74 this year, and I still believe in fairies, and I don't mind who knows it. I tell the whole world, and I don't care.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that they're about. I know we've got some little, I'm sure we call them gremlins on the boat, moving stuff about. We've always called them the gremlins. What do you say when things get moved about and you haven't moved? They're still around, even if they're not showing themselves to us at the moment. They're still here. Yeah,
a lot of people notice that at the moment.
I think if you attract a spirit, they're with you whether you know it or like it or not. If you're that type of person, particularly if you are psychic, as our family are, it seems to run through families, doesn't it? It seems to always be inherited. So I still do. I make fairy doors now, and I make fairy gardens, and I sell them.
Cute. Did you ever see fairies again as an adult?
No, I haven't. No. And that saddens me in a way, but maybe they've got other children that they need to go and help, because I know they helped me through some lonely times when I was a kid, because I was such a loner. And I think that's why they let me see them. Now, thinking back to it, they helped me and comforted me an awful lot. They really were amazing. It was just glorious. I lost hours in that garden.
Yeah.
Hours. Just because it was a circular garden with a little walkway round and a tree in the middle. But the rocks used to come out on the outside up, so you could get hidden like in a sunken garden, and I could hide in there and just talk to the fairies and build them houses. And that's what I did. But they were glorious. They were all rainbow colours and luminescent, is the only way I can describe them, and tiny. To me, as a child, they were tiny.
Yeah, that's really beautiful.
Now, but they were glorious. I've never, ever forgotten it, ever. It's precious.
I hope they found somewhere else to go.
I hope they did. I'm sure they did. I'm sure they understood it wasn't my doing. I would have stayed there forever if I'd had the choice, even though this house scared me a bit sometimes with all the goings on that went on there.
Yeah.
Be terribly haunted.
Did you tell your sister about the fairies?
You know, I honestly don't remember. I really don't remember, because she's 2 years younger than me, but she always had a lot of friends, and she was always busy with her friends. So I would go in my fairy garden.
Yeah.
And that's what I did, because I was so painfully shy. I couldn't just walk out and say, hello, be my friend. Not in my nature. So I would go in my fairy garden. I don't think I did ever tell her. I don't know if my mum and dad knew. I think they must have been aware, both being psychic anyway. I'm sure they knew what was going on, but I don't remember telling anybody. I think this is the first time I've actually really opened up about it.
Oh gosh.
I've told my kids. I've told my kids, obviously, but I've never talked much about it ever. I lost you again.
You did for a little bit, but it's back now and it's fine. It's weird. It's like it was kind of slows down. It sounds like you're underwater.
Oh, it's a nightmare. This is just being on the boat. And I'm out the front now, so sitting on the front deck.
I'd rather have dodgy Wi-Fi from time to time and live in a canal boat than have perfect Wi-Fi and, live a bit more of a boring life.
Yeah, I must admit, we do love it.
Oh, thank you so much. I've really, really loved chatting to you.
It's been lovely. It's been nice. It's amazing what you've helped me remember, really.
Oh, fabulous.
But I've had a lovely time, and thank you so much for inviting me to do this. It's been really, I hope it helps somebody somewhere along.
I'm sure it will.
Somebody.
Thank you. Well, now that you've remembered, maybe you can write it down and see if you can reconnect with them in any way.
Yeah, that's a thought too, actually. That is quite a nice thought. And thank you so much for inviting me. Time to
I really loved chatting to our guest. Her story resonated with me, as you could hear, and I imagine many listeners too, where sensitive children find it hard to adjust to school systems and socialisation, not to mention belief systems that just don't fit their perception or instinct about the world. Often, as children, we're expected to put up and shut up, and sometimes we carry that into adulthood. I'm pleased to hear that our guest simply no longer cares what people think of her belief in fairies, and that she was able to hear others experiencing similar encounters. She is not alone. In fact, I'd go as far as to say that most people probably know someone who has had one of these experiences, even if they haven't lived through an extraordinary experience themselves. Childhood encounters with fairies is an area that I'm particularly interested in, and a lovely old one came up in conversation with Bethan Briggs Miller and Ailsa Clark on Erie, Essex. I'll read it to you now, from Seeing Fairies by Marjorie T. Johnson. Miss Bay Kirkcaldy of London related the following experiences of fairy vision. My childhood was spent at Harlow, Essex, in one of the manor house type of dwellings for which the county is well known. When I was about 12 years of age, Edward, our garden boy, who had recently left school and taken up work for us, called me and said he wished to show me something interesting. At the back of the house we had 2 kitchen gardens, the newer of the 2 dividing the older from an orchard. At the orchard boundary a Christmas tree had been planted and was flourishing. It was simply crowded with fairies about the size of dragonflies, perfectly recognisable as to sex, and seemingly quite indifferent to our presence. I remember it was a bright mid-morning in June, and the sunshine seemed to enhance their shining, almost luminous appearance. We watched them for some time, the young lad telling me that he'd seen them often. He cautioned me not to go too near, as the fairies would all disappear if we did, so we watched them across a stretch of kitchen garden. I should guess that we were about 10 or 12 yards away from them. Our observation was interrupted by a housemaid who called me in to lunch. Edward told her he was showing Missy the fairies. She said something to the effect that that wasn't unusual, but I'd better not say I had seen them, or grown-ups wouldn't believe me and would say I was fibbing. I remember she said to Edward, "We've often seen them, haven't we?" or words to that effect. Then she touched her lips with her fingers, as if to say, "Don't let anyone know." When I went back in the afternoon, they had vanished, leaving no trace, but what I had seen that morning left a very deep impression on me. As I read that, I just feel quite sad when she encourages the child not to tell anybody about her experience. As we discussed on the show in May, it seems so sweet that the young lad admires and trusts this little girl enough to share a very precious secret with her. But it also saddens me that they know they have to keep quiet about it, as they won't be believed, and may even get into trouble for making up stories. What a strange world we live in, where people's own lived experiences are stifled so as not to upset or offend others' limited ideas of everyday reality. Going back to our guest, once again it appears that within certain families runs a predisposition for seeing and communicating with beings from the other world, including loved ones who've passed over. It's just a very normal thing to happen for some people. I think it was Patrick Harper in Demonic Reality, and certainly Mike Cleland also, that suggested people with these gifts would have been shamans in early cultures. Can these ancestral memories pass through genetics, through generations? Our guest notes that they've always talked openly about this sort of phenomena, which works well for them and their family. I admire their understanding and acceptance. It's so important for people to feel accepted for who they are, by someone at least, even if they don't yet feel able to be their true selves at work or in other social situations. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much for listening. As I mentioned at the beginning, this conversation continues on Patreon, where you'll find lots of other bonus content, including unreleased material from previous interviews, which often takes a deeper dive into some of the topics. We have a lovely caring community called the Curious Crew, and a chat on Discord, and I hope to meet some of you there. Please do take a moment to rate the podcast and to give it some 5 stars to help spread the love, and maybe even a review if you're feeling it. Please also share with friends whom you think might enjoy it. Maybe the contents of this episode strike a chord with you. This world can be quite a jarring place for sensitive folk, but there are many of us, and there are a great deal of groups to join now, either in person or online, where you can connect with like-minded others, so please never feel alone. We might not see the world as other people do, but that's part of the joy and mystery of this world, and we all have something to offer. Thank you for joining me, and always remain curious.